we were the first to hear about the Premier League statement, and that Manchester City had been hit with over 100 charges of alleged financial breaches. So Simon was speaking about it at length. Martin Ziegler, the top man at the Times, was on and joined us. He was writing about it at that time. It took everybody by surprise, and it had quite an impact on the world of football. And now it seems everybody's having their say on it. The fact is, if Manchester City are found guilty of the alleged financial breaches, how reputationally damaging will it be for what is regarded as the greatest league in the world? Could it still lay claim to that? Or would it be nothing more than the most tainted league in the world? Everybody's been having their say. Everybody in football is being asked for their opinion. Some are offering their opinion, some are not. And we understand that. And of course, one time, Manchester City stalwart, now of course the manager of Burnley, is Vincent Kompany. And Vincent was asked about these 100 plus charges of alleged financial breaches brought against his former club. And Vincent Kompany took the line, Simon, that maybe people on the outside looking in should be a bit more careful about what they're saying here. He says, no doubt, there's a lot of righteousness in the world to come and tell you what you've done wrong. And then if everybody looks at themselves, I think the football industry in general is not one that can afford to point the finger too many times. And he says, I'm very sceptical when people start pointing the finger. Do the best for yourself. Let's try and improve all the time. But I'm a little sceptical when the finger gets pointed that bit too easily. He's saying, hang on. Learn up before you have a point at
I do
point
agree.
your finger at City.
When you point at someone else, there's always three fingers pointing back at you as well. I mean, look, the bottom line is that he's right, that there's a huge amount of hypocrisy inside football that will judge others by standards they don't abide to. But what's that got to do with anything? Manchester City are the ones that are being accused, repeatedly accused, of course, by this almighty conspiracy theory of everybody getting together with an agenda to do Man City down. Everybody that can will get together and collectively try and do Man City down. Or perhaps Man City have questions to answer and they can answer them properly. And they can stop have allegations being made against them by everybody that encounters them, it would seem. That when it comes to questions being asked of them, they prevaricate and they delay, and one of their tactics is to delay and make it go into the long grass. That doesn't smack to me of people that are particularly motivated by clearing their name and making sure that, you know, the evidence that's provided is irrefutable, because it's not that difficult to be able to prove that you didn't pay someone on 2 contracts.
See, how have they got the information though, Simon? I had someone on a Monday night when I was on a show. And
WikiLeaks, Der Spiegel is an online site, and their emails have been hacked.
So in terms of the Premier League law, because basically it does, their law apparently suggests it doesn't matter how the information was obtained.
Correct. As long as it's relatable.
Whereas normal law in our country, if you illegally obtain information, then it's inadmissible, isn't it?
Well, certainly the standards that CAS applied, which was that there was an element of if the emails have come from a source that's slightly spurious, then it shouldn't be considered as part of the equation, albeit they then asked Manchester City to produce said emails to see if they existed, so it came from a legitimate source.
Yeah. But how can you produce them if they weren't real?
Well, tragically for Man City, I would anticipate that they were.
And they must be, because we've got to this stage.
And what Man City are saying is, you're not putting context into this, you're not putting nuance into this, you're not putting the actual scenario surrounding these emails. Well, you can read an email, ultimately you can read the context. What they're suggesting is that because an email says something doesn't mean it actually happened. That doesn't provide you with a smoking gun. It provides you with evidence of a whiff of one. And ultimately, if you're writing to someone about doing something, that doesn't necessarily mean you went and did it, right? But the bottom line is...
Incidentally, is Premier League already damaged by this?
Well, I would say to you, when Arthur Anderson's were brought into disrepute for the corruption around Enron, did the entire accountancy world collapse around it? When Bernie Madoff ran one of the most dreadful Ponzi schemes for investment funds, did nobody ever invest any money again in any investment houses? They'll have a whiff of impropriety. The fact that they're going to clean house will suggest that they'll turn around and say, we've given them an opportunity to exonerate themselves, Man City exonerate themselves. We've given them an opportunity to exonerate themselves, Man City don't. It'll show the effectiveness. You can't lay claim to a situation of saying the league's been damaged if ultimately they rectify the situation. We've got constant issues around football clubs around the world. Did Juventus's behaviour damage Serie A? Does it help it? No. Does it damage it? No. Does it give it an opportunity for people to say it will be damaged, those that want to profit from the damage that they would allude it has?
Yeah.
No. Will it stop broadcasters around the world wanting to buy Premier League football over and above Serie A and La Liga? Of course it won't.
Will it stop top players thinking about joining Manchester City like that, Danny?
Well, it's got to, hasn't it? At the moment, if you were thinking of going there in the summer, I don't. It's it's unprecedented, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think you'd need a lot more information if you were a player or the agent being asked to go to City in the summer, because if there were punishments dished out sooner rather than later, then it's going to have a very quick impact on your career. And Pep could walk the next day.
It's a different discussion.
So you didn't think you didn't think it would affect players' decision-making
No, I
process?
don't, because I think ultimately...
Well, it would if the punishments come in.
Well, yes, but the punishments are not this summer. These punishments aren't happening anytime soon. They will.
See, that bit I don't understand, and maybe you can give me some clarity, and maybe other people who haven't listened to you talk on this, because I haven't. How can they
delay it?
Well, it's taken over 10 years to get here.
Well, let's say they've got 4 years. The 4 years of the investigation, they must have some pretty concrete evidence.
Well, they will have some pretty strong evidence for Man City to be able to contend with. What Man City will then do is ask for the validity of the acceptance of these charges and to make sure that they accept all the charges. So that'll be a hearing about the validity. Then they'll try and split the hearings. And then when the hearings have happened, let's say Man City are found guilty. Let's just make that assumption for a second. Right? I'm not saying they are.
No.
Man City will appeal.
Yeah.
Right? And that will take you into 2 years. Now, of course, if Man City are found innocent, I don't know whether the Premier League will appeal that and suggest that the independent commission, which is their own makeup, needs to be reconvened under a different auspice and reconsider different evidence, or reconsider their own verdict, or whatever Man City or whatever the Premier League want to do. The bottom line is we are not seeing a conclusion to this anytime soon. And if previous form is to go by, and I know that Man City fans don't like this, and I know that sure the Man City ownership won't like it either. If your stock in trade is to be upfront about the methodology you deploy, which is to get the slickest, best lawyers and kick it into the long grass, that to me, having been an experienced commercial man that's been involved in many legal battles, and honestly, without being braggadocio, won most of them, because truth is on my side, I get there hard and fast because I want to make sure that people understand where I'm coming from and what my position is.
Because it's your reputation at stake.
Well, because I've got truth on my side.
Right.
And truth on my side will trump sentiment, will trump agendas, will trump Machiavellian thinking. It will confront. So if you've got irrefutable evidence, what Man City would have you believe, and so would a group of their fans, that everybody's conspiring against them. We had a guy come on yesterday and say, and the ESL was configured because all the elite clubs want to carry on being elite, and then admitted that Man City were invited to be part of it.
Yeah.
So whatever are you babbling about?
Yeah.
The bottom line is you've got to get past your victims complex. Your ownership model should be able to squash these allegations easily. If they've got fact on their side, they should be able to squash them. You cannot keep making up conspiracy theories of third gunmen on a grassy knoll that are trying to shoot you in the crossfire because perhaps you may have done something wrong.
It defies logic, all that nonsense about...
Well, the money involved here is enormous, isn't it? And in comes Lord Panic, P-A-N-N-I-C-K.
Yeah, he's a top case
not
too.
P-A-N-I-C. But there's no panic with Lord Panic, but there is expense. Because Panic typically charges around $5,000 an hour.
Yeah, but why do they print?
And it's been known to
cares?
request $10,000 an hour.
Who cares?
So,
well, they're going to get best in class, aren't they?
I was about to say,
and City are going to struggle
for City.
Well, of course it is. You have to have the best representation. I mean, obviously, the stronger your case, the less the advocate is important. But an advocate that represents you is always important. And so with this in mind, and with the fact that there's going to be complexity, and there's going to be subterfuge, and there's going to be representations, and there's going to be... Because what people keep saying, it's the Premier League. What do you know the Premier League is? The Premier League is the clubs. So you're basically saying that there's a conspiracy, and they make up this story. And people think I've got an agenda against Man City. If Man City can clear themselves, clear yourselves. Get on with it, remove every single last vestige of doubt and crush the observations. But when you start misrepresenting things like 9 clubs wanted us booted out of the league. No, they didn't, Pep. 9 clubs didn't want you to do what your ownership tells you it does every single time is a problem, which was delay, procrastinate, tie people up in legalese so that you could delay the consequences of the particular allegations that are being brought against you so that you wouldn't be consequenced in the Champions League. That's all those 9 clubs said. Don't let them keep delaying. Make them come to an answer.
But they're not going to do that, though.
But that's not the same as this narrative that's been built up by Man City that everyone's against them. And 9 clubs wanted them booted out.
Simon,
they didn't.
Why,
they wanted the outcome determined.
Why would the owners, people in charge at Manchester City, in this over those years where they've been accused of certain things, be naive enough, stupid enough, or arrogant enough to make stupid decisions because they've got the best people in class in nearly everything they do. People overlooking the finances going, we can't do that, we're going to have to be careful. If that comes up, we'll get done.
If we make the assumption, and I don't think it's right for us to do so, right? Because then we're prejudging in everyone else's mind and we'll fall into the category of Man City fans saying you've already decided we're guilty. But if that was the case, I believe with great wealth and certain outlooks, you believe that everyone else is susceptible to allowing you to do precisely what you want. And certainly in the football world, which is deeply unprofessional at times, deeply immature, and operates on the basis of certain people who aren't very good being occupying very significant positions and get found out, and you see it all the time, that in that space, if you've got this kind of wealth, you come from this kind of culture where you can, where your word is law, and people have to accept it in the countries that you are part of, it's also very difficult to translate it into an industry that says you can't do this and you can't do that. Yeah. Enormous wealth. I don't want anyone to misrepresent that as xenophobia, because it isn't that. It's the culture of those countries where they have almost autocracy over their people, almost autocracy over their businesses. Yeah. So when they come into football and they're told, actually, you can't do this, you can't do that, that kind of wealth, that kind of power, that kind of state understanding. And be under no illusion that Man City, albeit not necessarily a state-funded ownership model, you've got the guy that owns it sitting in government in that country, so it pretty much is a state-owned business. They are used to being able to do what they want when they want. So you could say that's arrogance. You could say it's a product of their own environment. You could say it doesn't recognise the authority of the industry. Or you could combine them all together and say none of that applies. And everyone else, UEFA, who apparently UEFA were as harbingers of good. They were the ones repelling the greed in football. UEFA got it in for them. The Premier League got it in for them. The British judicial system that suggested that their conduct wasn't great has got it in for them. All they've got to do, Jim, is provide this, and they should be asking for transparent hearings. They wanted transparency closed down. They wanted a lot of things, and I hope Man City can prove their innocence. I don't want them to be guilty.
The question I'm constantly asked, Simon, just to round this off, at this stage, it's a story we'll revisit, no doubt, countless times in the future. The question I'm constantly asked, when do we know whether or not City are guilty?
Well, I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon. The complexity of the situation will have some detailing that needs to be evaluated. Yeah. But there's going to be no ardour, no vigour in Man City wanting to drive this to conclusion. They are going to make it a very protracted and drawn-out process with technicality at its centre. They're bringing in heavy hitters. Now, the fact this guy has represented Boris Johnson in Partygate doesn't suggest to me that there's a great deal of blueprint in that particular representation. But don't be under any illusion, this guy isn't a real swinger. Okay. He's a proper guy.
And for the record, Manchester City reaffirming their statement, we look forward to this matter being put to rest once and for all. So do we.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.